So my friend and I'm leaving his name out just for security.
Mm-hmm.
We go with a handful of armed National Army guys, and we go through this. It, if you've seen images of Fallujah,
Mm-hmm.
just devastated.
Mm-hmm.
The city just completely wiped off the map, and so we're going through this broken city, up this hill, past a burned out church, up to what's left of this like city hall civic center,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just nobody's there. And then these guys start crawling out of foxholes, and we explain who we are, and they're like, "Thank God you're here. Pray for us." And so
Mhm.
they're listing their prayer requests, and we do a short devotion, share some Bible with them as well. And these guys are just fried.
Mhm.
They've been in this frontline position for a couple of weeks.
Jeez.
Snipers, jets flying over, and then all of a sudden, these guys just have senses like cats. And one of them says, "Jet's coming." So they all go back into their holes. We head back down, and sure enough, the MiG 29s are circling. So that was one instance of what it looks like to bring that kind of help and hope and love to people in that situation. So to just bring the gospel to them in a time where they needed it. We found out that the next day, airstrikes hit that position. Then there was a firefight further down the hill. Two of them died, um, which stinks to hear about. But then to think, like, yeah, we got to share the gospel with these guys
Yeah, what an honor.
one last time before that happened. They were all believers.
Welcome back to On the Line. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Pastor Stephen Wiesenauer. He is a missionary in Thailand, but he's been doing a lot of work recently in Burma through an agency called the Free Burma Rangers. He has some just absolutely incredible stories about things he's experienced while working alongside medics as a chaplain, bringing the gospel to people who are on the front lines of this battle, which I did not really even know that much about, that's taking place in Burma. It's a civil war. Some of the travesties that are taking place there are just astounding. So in the first part of the interview, he's going to explain what's going on in Burma. And in the second, and kind of woven throughout, he'll explain some of his, just once again, eye-opening experiences bringing the gospel to these front lines. We hope you enjoy this discussion. As always, if you can simply click the like button, it takes 3-4 seconds. If you do that, it helps bring this video out and put it in front of new people. Or if you're listening on a podcast platform, if you can leave us a 5-star review, that also helps in a big way. Thank you and enjoy the episode.
All right, and Bennett says we're live.
All right.
Pastor Stephen Wiesenauer. Did I say that correct?
Very correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, very excited for this. So shout out to Tara Huff, who made this connection.
That's right.
But-
Old friends.
Yeah, so you were the pastor that married them,
Yes.
and they're good friends of ours, and they're members here. And we were just able to catch you now that you're here in the States, because you live and do
In-
most of your work in.
Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Okay.
We're based there.
And then
Yeah, and then I do work in Burma,
Mhm.
which is not far from Thailand. So I go back and forth, but home base is in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and try to come back about every other summer.
Okay.
And this is the summer that we're back.
and you work with the Free Burma Rangers, and kind of on the wide shot, you can see we've got
Mhm.
one of your newsletters, or this is your annual report.
Yep.
That's sitting here. So we'll spend some time very intrigued by this for two reasons. One, what your organization does is just very interesting. Spent a lot of time yesterday watching some of the videos, reading some of the stuff. Very fascinated on highlighting what you guys do. But also on the other hand, I'm really ashamed you know you're working in Burma, and I'm completely immune. I didn't know the things that were going on in Burma, and it's absolutely wild what's going on in Burma. You know, as far as things that are crazy and dark in this world, what's going on in Burma is got to be close to the top of the list. And your organization and yourself are working kind of on the front lines there. So what we want to do is kind of on this first part, spend some time trying to help our listeners and myself understand what's going on in Burma, and then move to what are some of the responses that are humanitarian responses, Christian responses, and that's kind of where your organization works. But what would be a good way to just kind of to maybe for us that don't know what's going on in Burma, for us to wrap our minds around what's going on?
Yeah, I think stories are always a great place to start, and I might start with two stories.
Hmm.
And one is about a little girl, 6 years old. Her name is Nancy. I met her in a safe house on the other side of the border of Burma. She had been taken to another country. I won't say which country that was for security. And the reason she was there was because the Burma army, uh, which overthrew their democratically elected government in a military coup, um, sent jets, sent an airstrike on her school as these elementary school, girls' school, was letting out. Two 500-pound thermobaric bombs
Mm.
blew up in the courtyard. Uh, Several of her classmates were just instantly killed. She lost the use of her legs. Her reproductive organs were also destroyed. Just the shrapnel, the way it went through her. So um, I'm in this recovery house, and there's maybe 30 to 40 people there. They're recovering from horrific injuries of all kinds. There's people who've stepped on landmines. There's people who've lost limbs. They're healing to the point where they can get fitted for a prosthetic limb, stuff like that. A lot of burn victims, head trauma. And I'm there just really doing kind of the work of a chaplain.
Hmm.
I'm encouraging, I'm praying, I'm doing Bible studies, just spent the whole day with them. And then I come to this bed, and there's this little 6-year-old girl in there who clearly did not want to be noticed. Um, and her mom's by her side. She's just forlorn. Here's the girl, just kind of that 1,000-yard stare.
Mm.
And so I did approach them and asked the mom through a translator, so what happened? And she explained what happened when the bombs dropped. And um, she said she hasn't spoken, she hasn't smiled since this happened. It was about 8 weeks prior to this. Um, and I just thought, what do you do with this? And as a Free Burma Ranger, one of our mottos is we bring help, hope, and love in Jesus' name to people who've been displaced and affected by armed conflict. Um, so I thought, how do I do that? Well, I'm a dad. Here's a 6-year-old girl. I have two daughters. I thought I'll just do what I did with my girls when they were that age. I would sit by their bedside and tell Bible stories and do this thing called Bible story theater.
Mm.
Just, ham it up, make it wild and crazy. They'll remember those stories forever. And so I told the story of Jesus welcoming the little children, and, acted out the disciples shooing the kids away. And then Jesus, takes them into his arms. And um, through this story, you can see, how people smile with their eyes. You can see the smile starting to creep across her face. And she actually made eye contact with me. And I've actually got a picture. Somebody snapped a picture right at that moment. It's really cool. And her mom said that's the first time she smiled. And yeah, I still get choked up talking about it.
100%. Yeah, I don't know how you would not.
And I've told the
Like
story
that.
100 times. So there she is. She's smiling, and she's kind of holding onto my arm, like, stay here.
Mm.
And I realize this is a brilliant theologian next to me. So she finally speaks, and she said, "So Jesus welcomes me like this."
Mm.
Yeah, you bet he does. And then she says, with joy, that means he welcomed my classmates too, the ones who died when the bombs fell.
Mm.
Yeah, he did. I mean, everybody's bawling at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then right behind us, in the picture, I'm kind of referring to the picture in my mind. There's a Buddhist husband and wife just right behind us, watching and listening to this whole thing. And the husband's there because he had stepped on a landmine. His whole right side of his body was pretty badly burned, so he's recovering there. She's there helping to take care of him. But then the wife, she just blurts out and surprised all of us. We didn't even know she was standing there. She said, "That's it. Now I get it. I understand." And we're like, what do you understand? And she says, "Look, we've been here. My husband's been here recovering for a month or whatever. Um, we've seen with the Christians here, there's something different.
Mhm.
There's a peace. There's a light." She's using Buddhist terminology. That's all she knows.
Mhm.
Um, and we've been trying to like get that. And for a Buddhist, it's just sort of a nebulous, unnamed energy that's out there that you're trying to grasp. Um, but when she heard this little girl um, connect that to Jesus and her own embracing in Jesus' arms, and even her classmates who died being embraced in Jesus' love and grace, it all connected for them. And the wife said, "Now that we know that there's a name and there's a person, now we can follow him, we can believe him." It was now something that they could fix their eyes on
Mm.
and follow.
The light was revealed. The light was incarnate. So now they had something tangible.
Yeah, they had something tangible. It was that simple. And so they declared at that moment, yeah, we believe, we're following this guy.
Mhm.
Um, so fortunately, so these are all Chin speakers.
Okay.
Chin is one of the languages spoken in Western Burma. So I'm working largely through a Canadian Chin Canadian pastor. So he's helping me translate. And so he helps them make more of the connections. And then um, literally within a minute of that, maybe less, our attention is all broken. We're having this conversation about, okay, here's Jesus and here's who he is and how to follow him and da da da. And this cell phone starts getting passed around. And everybody who sees this cell phone, there's instant anger, disgust. People are crying. Cell phone gets to me and I'm disgusted. It's a picture of the severed heads of 6 young men laying on the ground
Mm.
with their severed hands and feet chained together, laying by the heads. And these were people that the Burma army had suspected of being part of the resistance against them. And so this was supposed to be the punishment, the intimidation. And it was the Burma army that released this picture.
Mm.
When it got to that Buddhist couple, they were outraged, and the wife, who was doing most of the talking, the husband had pretty bad ear damage, who couldn't talk a lot. She said, "That's our village. We know those young men.
Mm.
We know their families." Yeah, I get choked up a lot with this, so just bear with. Blew me away. She said, "We have to go back. We have to help them. They need Jesus. We have to tell them what we just learned." And we're like, "Okay, well, how are you going back?" They're like, "I don't know, but we are leaving now."
Wow.
Like now. And so this means they have to get back across that international border through their part of Burma, down south. It's a couple days journey.
Tremendously dangerous journey, I would assume.
Yeah, dangerous. So there's Burma army lines, and if you have the right intel, you know kind of which way to go and what way not to go. But yeah, it's not a safe trip.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, "We're leaving now." Like they're literally packing what few things that they have. And me and this Canadian pastor were like, "Okay, we've got like what, I don't know, 20 minutes as they're packing their bags to like catechize them."
Yeah.
So we just kind of unload on them what we can. And I had no money. Like, this isn't a ministry where we have money to throw all over the place. The Canadian pastor, he was just stuck there. COVID happened while he was in that part of the world and got stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided to just stay and minister to wounded people like this as well. So I think we scraped together maybe about $150 worth of their money. prayed for them. I think maybe they got a pocket New Testament.
Mm-hmm. They were gone.
Bless them, and they were gone. And
Yeah.
I've never been able to locate them again. I know what village that they went to, but it's pretty remote. A lot of fighting down there, and I've never been able to get that far.
So how long was that whole process? I mean, you're telling the story to the young girl, the 6-year-old girl. They're listening. They're gone. What are we talking? Are we talking an hour?
Hour tops.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it made me think about Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have no idea what happened after that.
Mm-hmm.
Where did this guy go? What did he do? Who did he share the faith with? I don't know. And to me, it's really frustrating because I want to know
Yeah.
like what happened. But, then there's Mark 4, the ignoramus farmer.
Mm.
He's just scattering the seeds. He doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
He just scatters the seed, and look at that.
Yeah.
And this feels
Some plant, others reap. Right.
yeah, but this feels even a step removed from that. I just planted, and I guess I got to see a couple sprout up right there.
Yeah.
But then off they went just like that.
What strikes us how ready they are to receive the gospel. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, if you compare that to a context not like this, right? Not where the reality of evil is so present and kind of the horrors of life are just so accessible and right on your forefront. You know, you might hear something like, "Oh, that's nice." Maybe in a couple months I'll come back and I'll hear it again, right? But for them, it's just like they desperately need some kind of answer for this, and when that answer is presented, it's so crystal clear. They're ready to kind of have these either or moments where it's like, well, am I going to believe in that or not? And
Yeah.
it seems like for them, it was so apparent that, of course, this is what we must believe. Here's that light we've been searching for.
Yep.
This is made manifest. This is the answer we've been seeking. What'd you say? There it is. Is that what she said when she heard it?
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. She's speaking another language, but translated as like, that's it.
That's it.
Like, that's like the it that they've been looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've used this analogy before, but evil's all around us. Evil's always dark. Evil's always bad. But like if we kind of take a cue from the Screw Tape letters, for the most part, it's hidden. It's behind masks, and it might be gray, and you can kind of say, okay, well, it's not that bad, or yeah, I can deal with this 2 weeks from now. But there's places where sometimes like the mask just comes off. Burma's one of those places. Evil can just masquerade out in the open. People are Buddhists for a reason. They're hoping for something that's going to rescue them from that darkness. No matter who you are, you still know the darkness of death is coming. You're not going to escape from that. So they're reaching for something. But you get in these places where it's so dark, it's so spiritually dark. All it takes is just flicking one match. If the gospel is a book of matches, just flick a match. Everybody sees it. They instantly gravitate towards it. They may hate it. They may love it. They may have questions about it. But there it is. It's black and white. You're just faced with it. And what I love about it, and I get a lot of questions about like the physical difficulty of doing what we do. We hike with 35-pound packs, sometimes heavier, for like 20 kilometers. We'll do that every day. High elevation gains. We sleep in jungles on a hammock. And I mean, there is something fun and adventurous about that.
Yeah.
If you're wired the right way. And I am. But I don't do it just because I think it's fun. It's because at the end of that, there are people in darkness that are just absolutely ready for the gospel. And it takes that much, and you've got their attention. You have displaced people. Their villages have been bombed to smithereens, or they're afraid it's going to be bombed. And so they're living out in these jungle camps. And we work with some of the what are called armed ethnic organizations. So this would be like the Chin National Army or the Karen National Army. And they formed their own militaries to fight back against the Burma army, which overthrew their government. And so we'll go alongside them, we'll work alongside them, and they're able to help us find, okay, here's like 200 IDPs, internally displaced people. So,
Which there's something like 1 million, isn't there? I was kind of reading on it the other day, and
well, right now it's 2.7 million
oh wow,
internally displaced.
hmm
So this is like a refugee, but they haven't crossed the international border.
okay,
So right now it's about 2.7 million. So they're here, there, they're everywhere. And they may be displaced and then displaced again and then displaced again.
hmm
Um, and so, yeah, we'll work with these ethnic military organizations and they'll do recon and they'll help us know, okay, this is the way to go so we don't run into a Burma army camp or something. And here are 200 people camped out in the jungle. They need rice, they need blankets, they need maybe solar cells, whatever. We can't always provide that. We don't have a bunch of money, but what we do have is the gospel.
hmm
And we'll go there. They'll come out. They literally just come out of the woods, and there'll be a clearing. And we always ask them, one, can we work with the children? Can we do a children's program? So we come with like a VBS type program ready to go. So we're singing, we're dancing, we're telling Bible stories. We in our backpacks we've got craft material. We're doing bracelets with you've seen the black is for sin, red is the blood. Yeah, so stuff like that. There's something very healthy about that with addressing trauma. When children have been living in the jungle, they don't have regular school. Every time, even a passenger jet flies over, people are just, ready to hit the ground. So this alleviates a lot of that. It addresses that trauma in a very healthy way. And when the parents see this, it's very healthy for them as well. And then to be able to point to Jesus in the middle of that, wow. We have had times where we worked with the children for a couple of hours, did that. And then the parents, this might be a group of 150 adults. They're like, we want to hear that too. So we've just had literally people in a clearing in the jungle preaching. And we've gone for an hour and they're like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like we want more. And some of them are Christian, some of them are Buddhist background, others are animist. War makes a lot of people, what's the word?
Fatalist?
Postmodern.
Okay.
Postmodern in the most cynical sense. So, what's truth? And so war does that to a lot of people. But man, when they hear the gospel, wow, things light up. So that's what's at the end of those long hikes.
Yeah.
That's what's at the end of, a week of, blisters and because you've hiked so long and bathing in rivers and pulling leeches off of your.
Yeah.
I won't say we're at the end of that.
Frodo and Sam journey.
Yeah, it's a Frodo and Sam journey. But I'm kind of digressing here. But
yeah. So what's some of the so what's going on in Burma? Why is all of this taking place? Why are airplanes dropping 500-pound bombs on schools? Has this always been the case, or what's going on kind of geopolitically or historically? You talked about a military coup and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. The background is perplexing. Technically, Burma has been in a state of civil war since 1948.
Wow.
So right after World War II, now it's an independent country, former British colony. And it started with different communist insurgencies or ethnic insurgencies. So there's already that fighting. China has always kind of been in the backdrop, supporting different sides. They have their own interests, natural resources. They want a pipeline out of it. They would really like a port on the Indian Ocean, which gives them a backdoor. So if they would attack Taiwan, the U.S. Navy can blockade them in the Straits of Malacca. So their shipping's done. But if they have this backdoor in the Indian Ocean, then they can get around that. So China has their interests and they kind of forever keep the country unstable. So this is since 1948, and they've taken turns supporting one ethnic group against another, the Burma Army against this group, or vice versa. It hasn't been constant fighting since 1948. It waxes and wanes. There have been times where the military has kind of relented and allowed elections, mostly for show. Say, hey, look, we're nice guys now. 1988 was pretty bloody, and then the country of Burma was such a pariah in 1988. This is when you had like the movie Beyond Rangoon coming out. Shortly after that, and a lot of that documents just the slaughter of the Karen people, and that's when you had a lot of Karen refugees coming to the Twin Cities, the Milwaukee area, other parts of the U.S. as well. And in 1989, they were like, well, we need to rebrand the country. Look, we're still a military dictatorship, but we're nice guys now. So they changed the name of the country from Burma to Myanmar. In that language, it's actually just a more formal way to say Burma. So they didn't actually change the name at all in their language. But then Myanmar was supposed to be this kind of, okay, look, we've turned over a new leaf. I don't know if you remember when the Detroit Lions went 0-16.
I do. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. So
okay,
which you are too, right?
I am too.
Yes.
And
I do remember when they went 0-16.
Yes, and the next year they rebranded and they made the lion look different.
Yeah. They had those black jerseys.
Like that changes anything.
Yeah.
And so they're like, hey, look, we're a brand new Myanmar now. And within weeks of that is actually Free Burma Rangers had documentation of them with the Burma Army still killing people in Karen villages. And so nothing changed at all. People ask a lot too, like, is it Burma? Is it Myanmar? It doesn't really matter what you say. But the name Myanmar was never accepted officially by most of the world. The U.S. still officially refers to it as Burma. I think even just a few weeks ago, I think it was Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, mentioned Burma by name. So some people ask, like, why do you call it Burma and not Myanmar? That's why. And then through the 90s, it was on again, off again fighting. You always kind of had the jets bombing villages or troops burning Karen villages. And then in 2014, a lot of international pressure, just the way the winds were blowing then. The Burma Army said, okay, we're going to allow elections. We'll allow free, fair elections. And the party led by Aung San Suu Kyi, she's a very well-known figure in Burma, was a political prisoner for many years, the leader of that political party. Her party won in a landslide. I think they won like 89% of the seats, so just swept. She was never really in charge. So during that administration, you still had the Burma Army committing genocide with the Rohingya in the south west of Burma. So you hear about all the refugees in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. That's all Burma Army driving them out. And then they had elections again in 2019. Aung San Suu Kyi and her party won in a bigger landslide. And then the military was like, oh no, we're going to just completely lose power. So in January of 2021, I think it was actually February 1st, actually, Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader of the country, was arrested. The members of parliament were rounded up. Some escaped, some were jailed, some were executed. And that same week, the jets started bombing runs on Karen villages, Karenni, which is another ethnic group, and also Shan, which is Shan State north of that. These all border Thailand. And this was a time where, if you were, close enough to the border, you could see the jets making their bombing runs and the boom in the distance. Also troops going through, and footage, some of it from FBR as well. Um, People literally just being chased into the jungle, and people with machine guns
Oh, wow.
running after them. Thailand was not letting very many people across the border.
Mhm.
They let some across, but they didn't want hundreds of thousands of people pouring in. So you had a lot of people just massed at the border. And I remember this was within weeks of it happening. Um, People have told me this, and I guess I agree. Sometimes it's hard to see ourselves the way others do, but
Mhm.
I have a very strong um, justice nerve.
Mhm.
And this just felt very wrong and evil. And I was talking and praying with a Thai pastor that I work very close with in Chiang Mai, and he was also pretty upset about it. And we were just like, "Oh, this is terrible. We wish there was something we could do." And he said, "Hey, let's pray."
Mhm.
And it was just a very simple prayer, like, "Lord, help and help us to help. Just show us what to do." And we said, "Amen." And it was kind of funny, like in stereo, both of us said together, "I have a pickup truck."
Mhm.
We both have pickup trucks, and we decided let's raise whatever money we can. We'll fill our pickup trucks with supplies. We kind of
Mhm.
knew what people needed, rice and blankets and medicine and stuff like that. And we did. We filled them up, and we drove to the border. We couldn't cross, but there were some Korean National Army folks that were that we trusted, and so they were able to take that across the border
Mhm.
for us. They sent back pictures, and so we knew it got where it went. And out of the 130,000 people, I think that were all massed along the border, we figured maybe we helped 300.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, that's our 300.
Mhm.
Um, but we wanted to keep doing more. And so we did a few more projects or trips like that. And at the same time, I had been building a relationship with a small Lutheran church body in Western Burma.
Mhm.
So this is the other side of Burma, far away from Thailand.
Mhm.
It borders India and then China to the north. Um, at first, there wasn't any fighting on that side of the country, but then when the fighting really erupted, then it started to get bad for them as well. And we were trying to find any way that we could to get supplies, medicine, food, and stuff to their members who were also scattering into the
Mhm.
jungles. And that's how I came across FBR. I knew a guy, and I said, "Hey, do you know anybody who can help out there?" And they said, "Well, we don't really have a lot of people that work on that side of the country, but we do have a couple of contacts."
Mhm.
And so I called them, and one of the men, I explained to him who I was trying to help and what I was doing. He says, "That's my church and that's my pastor. How do you know
Really?
these guys?" Um, and just one of those, you know, God things.
Mhm.
So I told him, and I said, "Oh," he said, "Oh yeah, I know who you are. We've heard of you.
Mhm.
You've been working with my pastor. We were doing like online Bible classes and theological education and
Okay,
stuff
yeah.
like that." So he said, "Yeah, I can help you. Um, we can get medicine, food, whatever." He's also a general in the Chin State Army, Chin National Army. So he's like, "I've got the logistics. Don't worry, I've got this handled."
Mhm.
Um, so they were able to get supplies to this Lutheran church body out in West Burma, and that's really how I really started to get deeply involved in Burma.
And with the Free Burma Rangers. Is that
Yeah,
kind of the in with the Free Burma Rangers was
yeah,
through that?
yeah.
Okay.
With the Free Burma Rangers. At first, it was just me going on my own.
Mhm.
I literally just got on a plane
Mhm.
and went there, and these were the guys that the Free Burma Rangers had introduced me to.
Mhm.
And then after that, it was kind of like, seems like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
I liked it. I was good at it. I could see that it was making a difference. And it was one of those places. I was in one of those places too, where it was like, if I pull back, there's nobody else who's doing this.
Mhm.
Nobody's going to West Burma to help these people, and I wanted to help them. So It wasn't something that happened overnight, but
Hmm.
it snowballed, and eventually there I was.
So that was in 2001. You said kind of when that first started, February 1st,
Oh,
2001.
sorry, February 1st, 2021.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
2021.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I may have misspoken.
No,
Yep.
no, you're right. Yeah. So 2021. So that takes place then. So what's taking place from then until now? So have things gotten more heated? Are they calming down? Also, when you mentioned kind of like he's a general in the Chin army. So is there a legitimate resistance
There's a
taking
legit
place?
resistance.
Okay, so it's
Yep,
there's a legitimate war going on. There's
L-
chances that the Chin army can push back
that's right.
against what's the group that did the military coup?
The
What was
Bur-
their
the just the Burma army.
just the Burma army.
Yep,
Okay, so you get the Chin, the Burma army, and for the last 3 years, things have been heating up or calming down.
heating up.
They've been heating up.
Yeah. So let me back up. Um, so I'm the king of tangents.
Hmm?
So sometimes I have to be reined back in. So after the coup, which was early February 2021, there have been coups before,
Hmm.
and the military has overthrown the government before. The military has been bombing Karen and Chin and other ethnic groups for decades. But the Burma army,
Actually, can I ask a real quick question
yep,
just as an aside? So, what does that look like? How does a military overtake a government? Like, I don't know what that looks like. Do they bring an army into like the government center and just like you know throw people into prison, or what does that look like?
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So once you realize you have all the guns
Hmm.
and your president and your parliament has no power to do anything about it, you just your tanks roll into the capital. Uh, you plan this out, and so members of parliament have soldiers showing up at their house. You've got parliament buildings surrounded. The president's arrested.
Hmm.
Um, so it's very much like you described. There's a funny video. I think it ended up on TikTok or YouTube, but there's a picture of some lady that had this yoga channel.
Hmm.
She does yoga or calisthenics in the Capitol. It was just this thing she did it every morning.
Hmm.
You can watch her and do along. So she's doing her calisthenics, her yoga, facing the camera, and then behind her, the tanks are rolling out, armored personnel carrier, people are jumping out with the coup is taking place.
Yeah.
And she just keeps on going with her yoga routine. She has no clue.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. Now the Burma army has been mostly dominated by the ethnic Burmese people, which make up about half of the population.
Okay.
And the other half is all the other ethnic groups
Hmm.
combined. So they control the military, they control the resources. They're armed to the teeth by China and Russia. They supply their weapons. In the past, though, they also control the media. So they could go bomb Karen villages. They could do whatever they wanted. And they would always just have this narrative like, well, they're Karen terrorists. It's a special operation to wipe out terrorists.
Hmm.
And people just bought it
Mm.
because they didn't know any better. They didn't know anything in the capital about the Karen villagers that lived over there. But when the coup in 2021 happened, something very different happened. People were very proud of their democracy. Aung San Suu Kyi was very, very popular. She was elected in 2014 and then again in 2019. And then when they overthrew that government, even the ethnic Burman people, they rose up, which had never happened before.
Mhm.
They always supported the military, but they rose up and millions of people took to the streets. And then the Burma army, they turned their guns on their own people.
Oh, wow.
And that's when the average Burmese person started to wake up and say, it's true. Everything they've been saying about our military massacring these people and doing these evil things, it's true because now they're doing it to us.
Is that the first time in like 70 years? Like you mentioned, from 48 up until 2021. Like for the most part, people bought into that narrative. And this was the first time that
Yeah.
people woke up.
Yeah, this was the first
Okay.
time people woke up.
So what's going on right now is very different historically. So like the war that takes place, it's not just status quo from the last 70 years. Two things are really coming to a head and running into each other.
Right. And so what happened, there was something that ended up being called the civil disobedience movement.
Mm-hmm.
You had everybody from teachers to police officers, members of the military and the government, just all at once rose up, quit their jobs, and they started forming these militias. Some of them were called People's Defense Forces or CDF, Civil Defense Forces. And you can still find videos on YouTube of like these groups of college students ambushing an armored personnel carrier, um, you know, blowing out the tires, taking the weapons, running through the streets. And over time, they organized into bigger and more disciplined armies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the ethnic states, you know, that largely ethnic Burmese dominant part, those are the Central Plains, and all the peripheral states, those are the other ethnic states.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Chin State. North of that is Kachin State, Shan State, Karen, Karenni. There's Arakan in the south. They've always had their own standing armies or militias
Mm-hmm.
because they've been protecting their people from the Burma army for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a lot more organized, and they also started working together more. Those ethnic groups didn't necessarily work well together either,
Mm-hmm.
but now they do. And now you have this also ethnic Burmese population that's risen up, fought back, and in many cases, they've gone to some of the armed ethnic groups and said, "We want to join you.
Wow.
We're going to fight with you now." So since 2021, and these are people who've been around a long time, old people who said this is the worst fighting they've ever seen since World War II. So from 2021, the fighting started in East Burma along the Thai border and then just spread across the country. And every place that was considered a strategic location, it could be a crossroads, it could be a strategic town. If there was a city with a adequate airstrip,
Mm-hmm.
The Burma army was definitely going to hang on to that.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's where all the fighting happened. And this is 2024. Yeah, we're three plus years into it,
Mm-hmm.
and the fighting is still as intense as ever.
So who is either side making any kind of progress? Like, so is the Burmese military, are they really pushing back? Like, are they right word, are they expanding? Are they showing a lot of victories? Or is the resistance, if we can use that name, right? Is the resistance starting to push back and gain some progress?
It depends on how you define success. In general, the resistance has done exceedingly well. I think in that issue, there's a map that shows what the Burma army controlled just prior to the coup.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of navigation, what they actually controlled, and that's coded red or pink. Almost all of Burma is colored pink.
Okay.
And then you flash forward to 2022, 2023, and you can see that it's mostly disappeared. So in most of those outlying ethnic areas, the Burma army presence is almost none, except for some of the key towns that they hold. And then they're concentrated in those central plains where that's always been their stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
There have been some pretty significant counteroffensives by the Burma army in the last couple of months. The last newsletter that I sent out covered some of that. That was the one where the guy lost his arm, and
that's the one I read.
Yeah, that one. So that was part of that offensive. So they've been able to take some ground back here and there, but largely, so for example, in Chin State, we can go almost anywhere we want.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of freedom of navigation. The Burma army can come back, but the terrain is such in places like that too, where it's all mountainous, and if they want to go anywhere, somebody in the next mountain range is going to see them coming,
Mm-hmm.
Tens of miles away, and they're going to get picked off by snipers and landmines in the roads and things like that.
So where does it look like this is going future tense? Like, does this look like it has a way towards whether it's some kind of peace treaty or does the resistance seem to have kind of a roadmap for putting an end to this and having actually like a military victory? Is there pressure from the outside world? I mean, you mentioned, China and Russia very much supporting the Burmese military.
Yeah.
Is there any help from the West or any other groups as far as trying to help the resistance or put pressure on the military, in
Yeah.
different ways to make them stop? Where does this go from here?
That's a great question. And I just don't have a lot of answers to the geopolitical um, plans of the US or the West. Um, what's frustrating to me is that there's so little news that comes out of Burma.
Hmm.
Um, one thing that FBR does, we do a lot of reporting. Everybody that we train them to be a reporter as well.
Hmm.
You're on the scene, you can make a report. And if it's a credible report, UN War Crimes can pick that up. A Western news agency can pick that up
Hmm.
if they're interested.
Hmm.
Um, where this is going, I think most people in Burma who are part of the resistance, they don't want to do what they've done before, which is fight it out for several years and then come to some kind of a truce or a ceasefire and then wait 5 to 10 more years. And then the same thing happens all over again.
Hmm.
Just gives the Burma army time to rearm and
Hmm.
try again. So they're fighting for total victory. They want to see the Burma army just gone.
Hmm.
Um, sometimes it looks like that's possible. They largely control those ethnic areas, but now they're at the Central Plains, and they have to push through that. And I don't know. It's anybody's guess how that goes, but um, people's desire is to see the Burma army go away. Yeah, that's hard when you know that they're being supplied by Russia, they're being supplied by China. They have endless supply of all the best weapons.
Hmm.
Um, they seem to be able to conscript troops endlessly. So, they are just pulling teenagers off the streets.
I read an article yesterday. I think it was from May, maybe 24th or something like that, and they were saying that they had been kind of losing a little bit in the last couple months. Things have
Mhm.
not been going well for them. This is the Burmese
Yep.
army or military, but they were now, I think, looking at maybe recruiting 5,000 people a week or something like that. And they were pulling older individuals
Yep.
into what they were trying to recruit, and they were very much kind of doing it by force and going into areas maybe that they've not been able to draw before. So
That's
they're
right.
making a very concerted effort on drawing new soldiers in.
Yes, that's true, and that's happening, and that's caused another wave of refugees. So people fleeing to avoid
Mhm.
conscription. The quality of soldiers that they get are not great. Morale is low. Some of them barely know how to use their rifles. I heard this somewhere. I don't know who said it, but then again, uh, quantity is a quality all of its own.
Mhm.
So if they can just keep throwing bodies at it, and the ethnic armed organizations, they're good fighters. They're getting more organized, but their supplies are limited.
Mhm.
If they launch an offensive and they don't meet their goal within a day or two, they're out of ammo,
Mhm.
and it can take weeks to resupply.
Mm.
And then the Burma army, they're just reloaded and ready to go.
Yeah. So let me ask, kind of pivoting a little bit. You mentioned before about the masks of evil, right? And then sometimes it's just unmasked and it's laid bare.
Yeah.
So why is that taking place here in Burma? It's been going on for so long. Can you attach some of it to the ideologies over there, the religious, the way of looking at the world? Like what is it that allows this evil to be so flamboyantly in our face there, and especially for so long?
Wow. I struggle with the why questions. Why did Hitler do what he did?
Hmm.
Um, there's greed. There's a lot of money and prestige that are wrapped into the culture of the Burma army.
Hmm.
Um, there's just classic racism and ethnic hatred.
What's that look like there? Because I feel like sometimes we're immune from that. We talk about that here, and there's certainly areas of it, but I've never really experienced it. I mean, I grew up in a high school that was relatively diverse, and I played football where it was definitely more diverse, right? And I've never really experienced hatred of other races. People
Mhm.
just kind of got along and they would joke around in the locker room on stuff, but I've never seen that full blown hatred where it's like your group of people is not human in the same way we are.
Yeah.
What's that look like there?
Yeah, I mean, you just put the words on it, and, um, before the coup, like the Karen or the Rohingya, even worse, yeah, kind of this idea that, they're animals, they're terrorists, they're like cockroaches. The only thing they understand is, brute force. Um, that kind of hatred and racism is often, kind of thinly veiled behind a sort of, self-righteous, we're protecting people from this evil, so, you just
Mm-hmm.
call that thing evil.
So you have to squash the cockroach so that it doesn't come
Yeah.
and harm us.
Yeah, so once you dehumanize it or make it look bad enough, then you can kinda do whatever you want.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, to this level for so long, I think one of the things that has allowed it to go on so long with just the mask off is very few people know.
Hmm.
Um, it's mind-boggling. We know what's happening in Ukraine,
Hmm.
but even that, I've only been back in the US now a couple of weeks, but, it seems like that's also dropped off the radar
Hmm.
quite a bit too in terms of how it's covered, but, missiles are still hitting apartment buildings there. Civilians are still getting, bombed out of their villages in Burma. And what makes the news cycles, um, what stories get chosen over others, is baffling to me.
Hmm.
I talk to reporters. I'm sometimes there to say, "Hey, here's what happened. Here's the pictures. Here's the coordinates." Or I work with the people that do that, and I can help verify. And they'll say thank you, but very little of it will make it into
Hmm.
a mainstream media.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do this to kind of help maybe people get a picture on their mind, and then I want to maybe transition into what Free Burma Rangers are doing, what their strategies are, to kind of help throughout this conflict. But
Yep.
Bennett, we can pull up two videos. I think that might be good. What do you think? Should we do the one that has more of the airstrikes, or there's the other one that was kind of the main one on the Free Burma Rangers YouTube page that kind of gave a good picture of maybe the plight? What do you think would
Yeah,
be better right now?
yeah, that one might be
The
better.
plight.
That,
Okay.
that's a good
So
intro.
if you go, all right, if you want to go to the Free Burma Rangers, you want to pause that one. Yeah, just go there. That Compelled by Love one I think is good. If you want to pull that one up. And Bennett, how's this audio going to work? Remind me. Is this going to come through the mics, or is this going to go straight through the TV and through the mics? Okay. So for those watching, you'll definitely be able to see this. For those that are on our Spotify, Apple, hopefully you'll be able to hear this. If not, the video is not long, so you can kind of skip ahead 3-4 minutes, and if you can't hear this.
Mele dari le bakaya didak hea didak wadini puni pertempatan demi ba. Wani da di kublo ni maza senaki ni petiti sutang gawa ba. Po di da pepuwe. Talako puda petile ciduko la ko mereka ko ke saya man po lo kele lo pesan miwe la.
For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Jesus, you saved me. I want to be with you, helping others. And that's what the Free Burma Rangers is about.
Chime Ranger galo. Yumu idame we. Dito kamapu plato pale abata soti mane odapa. Usota lo pa hako pu atu te la ko pa go. Ta dota lo go. Dota ma balo ke ta lo ko byo pu ago ni lo.
You can have any religion or no religion, be from any ethnic group, man or woman, young or old, and join FBR. Well, the main standard is be able to read and write, love your people, don't run if people can't run, don't give up. And you can be a ranger. And then here in the training, we push them. Mentally, physically, emotionally, we push them past what many think they can do, just to show that they've got a lot more ability than they think they have. The oppression that's here draws people to stand against it out of love. That is the way I think God made the world to be. We're made in His image. We're made to love Him. We're made to love each other. We are made to stand for justice. We're made to stand for freedom. We're made to be humble and work for reconciliation, knowing that none of us are perfect. We may not be able to stop the Burma Army, but we can stand with people in need. We can pray with them. We can give them medicine when they're sick. We can comfort them. We can train and build them up. These are things we can do. We can tell the world what's happening. We can acknowledge to them that we know what's happening, and we know God doesn't like it. Love compels us to go.
All right, so freeburmarangers.com is the website. Well, yeah, we can put that in the description too. And then you can find this video, and there's plenty of other videos on YouTube. And Bennett, you said you're going to be able to plug that in. Is that right? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so can you walk us through what are we seeing there?
Yeah, that's just a great snapshot of what happens with Free Burma Rangers. So the goal is helping people who are caught in those conflict zones. And it could be people caught between those front lines. It could be the people who've fled. They're in a jungle camp somewhere. They're fleeing somewhere. So people are trained to be able to help those people and meet those needs. There's a physical training component of it. We need to know that people can, one, physically get there, and then also have the strength left over to do what they came there to do after they get there. The basic ranger training for our ethnic rangers that go through this, it's about a 2.5 month training. So they do physical fitness, they do running and PT, the whole 9 yards. They're learning jungle navigation. You saw some clips there with like compasses and maps and protractors and stuff like that. So they're learning how to navigate. They're all trained in basic reporting. They're trained in what we call Good Life Club. That's just what we've branded our VBS style ministry to children. They all know how to do that. They all are given a type of first aid, which I think would fall under what's called TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care. And they're also given spiritual leadership training. So people can come from any faith. They can still serve the humanitarian cause no matter who they are. But when they're there, they're learning the Bible. They're learning about Jesus. Some of them will become Christians. Some of them are already Christians. Others may not, but they can still serve on those humanitarian relief teams in that way. That said, most of the Rangers are Christians. These are the ethnic ones. And for the foreign ones, the white ones like me, we're all Christians as well. So That's kind of what goes into the training, and the purpose is, literally so that they can get to those places and deliver the kind of help that they need.
Hmm. So what does it look like then on the humanitarian side? I know in your news article you kind of gave a story there. So I know you said the kind of I don't want to call them catchy stories, but the stories that would certainly grab your attention.
Yep.
Certainly some of these videos. That's not every day, right? There's a lot of things where you're at the base. Your family's been over, not so much in Burma, right, but in like Thailand.
Right.
Right. So you live there. Not every day you're not being shot at, right?
No, yeah.
But
not at all.
there's a lot of planning and everything. But once you actually go out into the field,
Yep.
what does that look like? Are there military excursions? Are there flyovers? And then what are you guys doing? You guys are not on the front lines like shooting at the enemy.
No,
right?
we don't shoot.
Okay.
We're not armed.
Okay.
There are some rangers who carry weapons for their own protection.
Mhm.
That's up to them, but most of us don't. I don't. There's maybe 3 scenarios, and I think each of these is a good snapshot, and I think I can explain them pretty briefly. So, in one scenario, my colleague and I, we heard there was this town that had been mercilessly bombed. Something like 14,000 residents just bombed out of this place.
Mm.
We heard, okay, there are people there who need spiritual care. So we went there. We had recon, and we had Chin National Army kind of clearing the way for us. We met up at a rear command base and talked to the commander there and said, hey, we're here to, minister to whoever's here. And they said, there's nobody here. They're all gone. But we have a frontline position that about a dozen guys are holding right up there. They're on a hill, and there's a Burma Army position about maybe a mile away from them on the opposite hilltop. They need your encouragement.
Mm.
If you're willing to go there, we'll send a couple of armed escorts with you and do your thing. So we prayed about it and said, yeah, okay, let's do this. So my friend and I'm leaving his name out just for security.
Mm-hmm.
We go with a handful of armed Chin National Army guys, and we go through this. If you've seen images of Fallujah, just devastated. This city just completely wiped off the map. And so we're going through this broken city, up this hill, past a burned out church, up to what's left of this like city hall civic center.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nobody's there. And then these guys start crawling out of foxholes, and we explain who we are, and they're like, thank God you're here. Pray for us. And so they're listing their prayer requests, and we do a short devotion, share some Bible with them as well. And these guys are just fried. They've been in this frontline position for a couple of weeks, snipers, jets flying over. And then all of a sudden, these guys just have senses like cats. And one of them says, jet's coming. So they all go back into their holes. We head back down, and sure enough, the MiG-29s are circling. So that was one instance of what it looks like to bring that kind of help and hope and love to people in that situation. So to just bring the gospel to them in a time where they needed it. We found out that the next day, airstrikes hit that position. Then there was a firefight further down the hill. 2 of them died, which stinks to hear about. But then to think, like, yeah, we got to share the gospel with these guys.
Yeah, what an honor.
One last time before that happened. They were all believers. Another kind of setting is, we've crossed that border. We've hiked through our jungles. We know that town was just bombed a couple of weeks ago, and these people have gone somewhere. And we have our military contacts who help lead us to the place where they are in the jungle. And we say, can we gather your children, and can we do this VBS program? We've never had anybody say no. And if I had a pie chart of like how we use our time, probably 70% of it is stuff like this. It's gathering the children, and we're okay. Let's sing this song, and we use the people that are there with us. It's amazing. Say, hey, is there a Sunday school teacher here? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help with crowd control? Can anybody play the guitar? Great. You get over here. And we just have a blast.
Mm-hmm.
It's singing and dancing and telling Bible stories. And we do this skit called Jesus on the Bus. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be another kind of way that we're there to help people. The last time I went in, this was what is this now? July. This was this was the middle of May. I went in for about a week and a half, and we were pretty close to a frontline position. And this was the Korean army trying to counterattack and push back the Burma army from a position that they were dug in. And so I was with several other medics at what's called a casualty collection point. About, I don't know, the front is not just a straight line, but probably about 500 meters from where that fighting was happening.
Oh, wow. So very close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Mhm.
And the idea is you want to be close enough so that as those people are evacuated, they can be stabilized as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
And again, this is that tactical combat casualty care. And it's based around basically stopping bleeding. So it's tourniquets, wound packing, chest seals, stabilize them enough so that they can get transported to a field hospital further behind the line. So I'm in the CCP camp, and the fighting's going on. It's not all the time, but pretty much constantly. There's these planes called Y-12s that fly over, and they're literally just pushing mortars out of the back of a plane on where they think the Korean troops are located, or it's suppression. Even if
Mhm.
they're not hitting troops, it's keeping them from advancing. So those are just falling all the time. You just hear this. You hear the rumble when they get pushed out of the plane, and then
Mhm.
do 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 do. And then the jets come, and they do these these bombing runs, and you've heard that roar of a jet engine
Mhm.
when it's close, and you think it can't get any louder, but it
Mhm.
does. And then the bomb is going the same speed as the plane, so by the time you hear the roar at its loudest, the bomb's already hit. So we can hear that going off in the distance, and then when they're coordinating their actual offensives, then you hear like the machine gun fire and the small arms and the battle ensuing.
Mhm.
And then once that happens, then you have to be ready at the CCP, because then the casualties are going to start coming
Mhm.
out. So it could be civilians just trapped in that place in between, or actual soldiers who've been wounded, shot, shrapnel, whatever. So they're getting received there. I'm not a medic. I have very basic TCCC training, so I can assist a medic. So if we had 3 medics and a 4th casualty came in, then I could work on that person
Mhm.
until a real medic
Mhm.
was able to take over. And in this last trip, we were in this place where we're receiving casualties. They're coming in a pretty steady stream. And this one guy came in. He was already on ketamine,
Mhm.
which takes away the pain, and so he looked like he was having a great time. But he's got this massive wound under his armpit. Shrapnel had torn through that axillary pocket,
Mhm.
major artery there. So he's got a tourniquet up as high as it can go. Already blood pressure almost 0, which means he doesn't have enough blood to pump. So we all know who the universal donors are, and I'm one of them.
Mhm.
So they're like, "All right, Steven, you're up." So I have my little medical pouch, and in there is emergency blood donor kits, the bag, the hose, the needle, all in one.
Mhm.
Massive needle, so it'll fill up fast, but
Yeah.
you see right down the hole of that.
Oh,
needle,
really? Yeah.
and
So did you do it yourself?
No, I didn't. One of the other medics got it going for me. Put the strap on and put that thing in, and the bag fills up. And we transport the patient then on we call it a bambulance.
Mhm.
It's just a bamboo pole with a hammock strung underneath it.
Oh gosh.
So he gets carried on the bambulance up onto a pickup truck.
Uh-huh.
and then the pickup truck.
It's going over a smooth road, right?
Yeah,
Really paved.
yeah, no, yeah, just a mess of a road, and I think it was about maybe a 5-kilometer trip.
Man,
Further
I
in
can't
the
imagine
jungle.
having an injury like that put in the back of a pickup truck. And I mean, I've been to Africa a couple times, and those roads are just atrocious. I'm sure these roads are even worse. Just bouncing up and down. And
Yeah, they're pretty bumpy, and so he's the back of the pickup truck. I emailed you the video, the one that was part of that PDF.
Mhm.
It works if you open the PDF, but if you're like in view mode,
Which is probably what I was doing.
the link doesn't work. But I did send you that link. You can see the bamboo pole kind of gets put in the back of the truck kitty corner.
Okay.
So he's kind of swinging.
Okay.
So he's not just bouncing on the truck.
Okay. That's good.
So he's in the back of the truck. I'm in the back of the truck. There's a medic, a former, call it a PJ. That's a Air Force, like Special Forces medic.
Okay.
I didn't know they existed until then, but
Yeah.
these guys are the best of the best. So he's there. We have some of our ethnics with us as well. So I've got my bag of blood. The PJ's getting that ready for transfusion. I'm there as primarily a chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just by his side praying. I don't know what he can understand or not. He's loaded full of ketamine. And we get to the field hospital. It's just beds under bamboo roofs out in the
No
open.
mattresses, right? I think I read that.
Yeah, no mattresses. It's just like the metal bed frames
Uh-huh.
with like sometimes a blanket on it or something. Just out in the open in the heat. So we were there just long enough to see that the surgeons were going to work on him.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea at this point. Is he going to live? Does he save the arm? We don't know. And so that's what that day looked like. Casualties coming in of all kinds. For some reason, a lot of limb amputees on this particular trip. So then for me, the next day, the fighting had really slowed down. The Y-12s are still dropping mortars here and there, but that CCP was really no longer receiving casualties. So we moved, and it felt like my place probably needed to be at that field hospital.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that there were dozens of wounded there, recovering and dying. And one of our ethnic leaders, dear man of God, he came to me and he said they need Jesus at the clinic.
Mm.
Like, can you go there?
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and by God's grace, another just wonderful man of God who had the same heart and was willing to translate for me. We literally just went to every single bed. I think it was about 30.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked to them. We encouraged them. We don't know if they're Christian or Buddhist or what when we first meet them, but we ask. And even if they're Buddhist, I always ask permission. Can I talk to you about Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay if I pray for you in Jesus' name? And again, strike that match of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing what that brief moment does. And then I get to the guy who got my blood the day before, and I'm like, oh, he's alive.
The guy with the amputee that took your blood.
Yeah.
So he's
I'm like,
there.
Yeah, I'm like, he's alive. Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, shoot, his arm's gone. And like all the way at the top.
Mm.
And he does not look happy. And so I'm talking to him, and I wasn't gonna be like, hey man, I gave you my blood.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody else mentioned it, and he kind of got this weird look like, this dude's blood's in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't expecting a thank you, and he didn't give me one. It was just kind of like, okay, wow. Just acknowledging that happened. And then and this was hard. I mean, I felt vicariously mad with him. He got injured that way because he was in his foxhole. Everybody was dug in. And unless you got one dropped right on top of you, you were fine.
Mm-hmm.
But he had some kind of food poisoning, raging diarrhea. He had to keep coming out, going to the bathroom. And one of those times when he was out, a bomb hit and the shrapnel tore up through his arm. And I don't know if you can delete this out. or bleep it, but he was like, I'm going to have the rest of my life without an arm because I had to take a shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, I would be mad too.
Yeah.
Um,
Man, what a terrible situation to be in. You've got food poisoning, which is bad enough. You're in a foxhole. There's bombs going off. Can you imagine? That's a good thing to have in your mind when, like, when I don't know, something's frustrating at the house or like milk spills, and you're like, oh no. It's like, well, at least I don't have food poisoning in a foxhole in Burma with bombs going off.
Yes.
Right? It's a good way to just put things in perspective.
It could
That's
be a
about
lot
as bad as
worse.
it gets.
And I don't know, as a pastor, there's like no way that you're trained for stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, yeah, that stinks.
Mm-hmm.
That stinks. And then the only thing I could think of was I said, if it would help, I'd give you my own arm.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give you my arm. And I meant that. And he saw that. And I saw this smile, and I thought, okay, there's some laughter coming. This is good. And he said, your big white hairy arm would look horrible on me though. So I was like, okay, this is good. And then we talked and we prayed, and I don't know, it's kind of like the grizzled Karen National Army version of that 6-year-old girl. Like he just wanted me to stay there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And then I got to the other patients that were there. One person arrived. I'd taken a break, and somebody had brought in somebody who was injured, and he was still moving when they were bringing him up to the surgical area. And then the doctors checked him, and they're like, he's dead. So he just literally died right in front of us. And his friends who brought him in, it's like 6 or 7 young men, were just devastated, and they didn't believe the doctor. They're like, he was literally just talking to us. No religion. I would call them like agnostic Buddhists,
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist background, but really no practicing faith of any kind. They literally did not know what to do. He's just laying on a blanket on the ground. And somebody came over, and they're like, you're a pastor, right? Like, do something. Like, lead, do something. So I'm like, okay, let's at least cover him up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's cover him up. And I said, I don't know if you guys are Christians or not, but I'm going to pray,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to thank God for the life of this person. And we did that. And it was kind of a combination of like, wow, that was awesome, to like, that was really weird what just happened. And then I said, well, what now? And they said, well, we have to take him back to his village. And I said, okay, I'll help you. So we put him on one of those metal bed frames, just without the legs. And I helped carry him maybe about a mile or so to the village, and watched them attempt to say goodbye to somebody that they have no idea where he's going.
Mm-hmm.
That was tough. And then I went back to the clinic and continued to minister to the sick and the wounded that were there, the doctors and the nurses as well. These are volunteers from different countries. Some of them are local, just working their tails off. Many of them are Christians. And to be able to, in some of the slower moments, to say, how are you doing? How can I pray for you?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, it was time to go. And my friend who lost the arm, I stopped by his bedside one more time, and he said, hey, will you pray for me one more time? So I did. And I was like, can I have your contact information? It's like, no, my phone got blown up, and we had to go. So again, it's one of those, I have no idea if I'll ever see him again,
Mm-hmm.
but I hope I see him in heaven. So I don't know. That was a lot of talking, but kind of 3 different snapshots in the day in the life of a Free Burma Ranger. And then when it's all over, we hike back out. We cross the border. Then it's about a 3-hour drive to Chiang Mai, and I'm home with my family. And it's soccer and kids on their bikes, and I don't know if it's like time travel or interdimensional travel, but the difference between those 2 worlds, I still don't think I found the right a way to put it into words what that feels like.
Well, that was going to be my question. And what's that like to come home and for your kids, right? So your kids are they're going about their day and they've got kids' worries and kids' concerns. And like you said, they're playing soccer, or, they're fighting over a toy or something like that. Like they're doing, and your kids are a little bit older, I guess, than mine, but they're doing their thing. And you've been doing that for a day, a couple days maybe.
Yeah.
And then you come back and, oh, good, Dad's home. Like, Dad, come play soccer, right? And you're coming back with all of your experience and all of that, and you still have to process. And now it's okay. Let's go kick a soccer ball, son. So how does that work with those two worlds colliding?
Yeah, I mean it's great. So sometimes I'm gone for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time.
Okay.
Just depends on where we're going. But yeah, you get back and it's great to play soccer, and run around with the kids. I don't feel guilty about that at all. I thank God for that, and I wish everybody in Burma could do that as well. I do share with the kids though, as much as I can. I don't show them the gory pictures, but they do see pictures of me, running up the hill with the guy on the stretcher, and Nancy, the 6-year-old, who lost the use of her legs, my youngest son, another one of those things that makes you choke up. He prays for her by name every single night. And they make comments too about, Dad, if people knew this, they probably wouldn't complain about that. So they get it, and it's real. I think I get probably what would be considered like secondary post-traumatic stress. Right? It's not your stress, but caregivers, pastors get this a lot too. When you're around people who are suffering and struggling, it kind of piles up over the years, and that's kind of its own thing that you have to deal with. So I'm not sure how long you've been in the ministry, but when you hit about 5, 6, 7 years, people start to feel it, and it's good to acknowledge it, and it's very easy to deal with if you deal with it. But yeah, that piles up, and I have people that I get to talk to. FBR does a great job of debriefing.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful coworker, Ross. I'll just mention him here. Hi, Ross. Also serves in a chaplain role with FBR, and just does a good job of when I come back, hey, how's it going? He has this way of asking, how's your heart? And just is a good reminder to slow down, probe, give time to process, and then being able to share whatever we can. I don't know, there's something very cathartic, but there's that justice nerve again. It seems to be the right thing to do. It feels right to be able to share those stories. So I write as much as I can. My newsletters are way too long for a newsletter. People want that quick, how you doing? But I write these long narratives, and some of my stuff will end up in these publications. Some of it does get out to news media. A few things that I've helped with have made it to the BBC and some other random outlets, but it feels very good knowing that somebody knows this. Somebody is aware of this. And for our friends in Burma too, it means the world to them that, one, you're there. You came for them. You came all this way for nothing, but for them. And you're taking that story back and knowing that someone else anywhere, even one person, got to hear about them. Yeah, that feels really good.
Well, we talked with Dr. Bill Weinrich, and he was talking about the early church, and he was saying, well, one, he was comparing the similarities between the early church situation and then our own situation, as we're more surrounded by non-Christians and maybe paganism and different varieties. But he said that in the early church, the biggest way that the gospel was shared was through the lives of the Christians.
Amen.
Right? That's how Christ was made manifest and shown to people. And as you're kind of telling those stories, that is very much what's taking place there, right? So it's with the first example you gave with the 6-year-old and with the Buddhist couple behind you, right? it's not like you're like, okay, we're gonna have a 4-hour introduction to Christianity class. And do you know the philosophy of like God and whether or not he's like one or many?
Yeah, and
you know,
here's my 12 points of evangelism that I memorized. I'm
yeah,
gonna give
which
you.
which those things, different settings, those things are especially needed, I think, in an American context where
Yeah.
people are exposed to bad philosophies and theologies, and you have to like debrief those and kind of get to the
Yep.
core and understand the difference. But it often, I think, the gospel is more effective in areas like this, where they look and they say that man's willing to walk with me to carry my dead friend back to his village,
Yep.
and he knows we're not Christian, but he's doing this because he is Christian, and then they can see Christ at work.
Yep.
I think it was Luther, one of the early Lutherans, who had this idea of the masks, that God always wears a mask, right? But he's at work in the church, or he's at work through acts of mercy, or he's at work through the preacher, or he's made manifest through Christ. Or if you looked at Christ at first glance, you'd say, oh, there's another human, which he was fully human, but then there is actually God at work, right? So that's one of the effective ways that the church can share the gospel, is just via its actions and putting on Christ.
I agree, and I believe people see it before they hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my case with my classmates in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it before they said anything. And to that note, I guess I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't share this. And this is about the church in Burma.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really an FBR story, but this is a Lutheran church body in Western Burma. I won't name the names or the location just for their security, their safety. But this was the group that I was doing these online Bible studies. We're working towards fellowship and all the things that Lutherans do. And then the fighting starts to rage in his part of the country. And then it's bombs and bullets and people are flying everywhere. They had 8 congregations. 2 were bombed. 1 or 2 were burned. The others, people just fled.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were down to 3 congregations. Most of those people had fled. And I asked this pastor when it was getting really bad, kind of at the beginning of 2024.
Okay.
Just like we could see the fighting was closing in on their town. This is going to be a battle royale. And I said, are you going to flee, pastor? Like, at what point do you go? And he said, I'm responsible for my members. He said, if all of them can go, then I will go.
Mm.
If there's one person who can't go, I'm still their pastor, I'm still their shepherd, and I will stay.
Mm.
There were 3 families that were not able to go, so he stayed. His son actually left and went to the border, and he was urged to go because he was at that age where he would have been conscripted.
Mm.
So everybody thought that was a good idea, but the pastor stayed, his wife stayed as well. We had just raised some money that we had originally sent for food and medicine, and if people needed to flee, some travel money. But most of the people had fled already by the time they got that money. And so he said, hey, for us and for these 3 families that are here, can we reuse this money to build bomb shelters? Like real ones. We want to dig in, sandbags, everything that costs money. So we're like, yeah, of course, do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. They built these bomb shelters. And then they still had some money left over. And they said, hey, we've got these ethnic Burmese Buddhist neighbors. Can we use it and build bomb shelters for them too? So they built a couple bomb shelters for them. And then I start getting these pictures of, here's these people getting baptized. They're worshiping, and they're like, oh, here's these 8 new Buddhist, ethnic Burmese believers. Oh, here's 12 more. I'm like, so where are these people coming from?
Yeah.
He's like, these are just our neighbors. And what happened? Like, how did they become Christians? He said, well, we stayed and we built bomb shelters and they saw the love of Christ. I'm like, that's it?
Mm.
Yeah, that's it. And of course, there's more to that. But the point of the story was, because they stayed, they had the courage to stay. They didn't run, and they showed love to their neighbors. And these neighbors then came to them, and they were like, this is different. whatever it is, whoever it is that you follow, we're all in. So, this congregation went to almost nothing, and now it's grown up again in the middle of a major conflict. So,
Wow. So is he still living?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But he was willing to be martyred.
willing to be martyred.
Yeah.
They still have. There's a point where they had stopped worship, and they're like, there's bombs and bullets and stray mortars and whatever. And then they got to the point. This was last year. Same pastor. They said, "Look, we're just as likely to die hiding under our houses from stray bullets, especially if it's an airstrike. Boom, nothing's going to save you from that. If we're going to die, we might as well die worshiping. So let's resume worship.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to die, and our neighbors are going to die, they might as well hear the gospel." So they started this children's English outreach program targeting Buddhist families.
Mm-hmm.
There's no school. Nobody's going to school. There's no organized anything because of the fighting. But let's gather them a couple times a week. We'll do basic English. We'll do Bible stories. So they're reaching out. They know very well, yep, this could be the last day that they're alive, but at least they sowed the gospel seeds and they had a harvest from that as well. So there's this awesome picture with all these little kids and then their parents, and it reminded me of Martin Luther, who didn't flee during the plague either. He stayed, and I think that's the kind of courage that inspires me. And it's not a courage that's driven by kind of a chest beating, rah rah, let's go be a super Christian. It's just driven by love. It's the love of God and the love for the people around you. And we know how this all ends anyway. We know that we're going to be at that banquet table in Isaiah 25. This is our Savior. He's the one who saved us. He swallowed death. If you know that, sky's the limit. Go get him. And for me, I don't know. I just feel like the least deserving person to be part of this. Chief of sinners, though I be, and to be a part of something like this is just incredible. And to know at the end of those long hikes, here are those people hungry for that gospel. Struggling to put it into words.
That was well said. That was,
And I'll probably never find them, but that's the closest I can come.
Let's take a quick break, and then I've got some kind of follow-up questions.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And Bennett says we're back. So a couple kind of, now we can kind of step away and just some kind of reflection questions. But as we were just on break, you were mentioning that you actually have early onset Parkinson's. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease about 3 years ago. So Michael J. Fox, that's what he has. I usually preface it with, this is not your grandfather's Parkinson's. When it's diagnosed early, and early is usually defined as anything before 50. The progression is different. It's slower, different sets of symptoms, but it really caught me off guard. We had just moved from China to Thailand in 2020. And very shortly after that, was having just some weird issues, jitteriness, fatigue. We had just come from China, and it was a really, really stressful exit coming out of China. And I thought maybe I was dealing with some like post-traumatic stress type issues, and was going to a counselor, and he was treating it as such. And I don't know how many sessions into it, but he said, "I don't think you have any kind of trauma whatsoever, but I do think you need to see a neurologist." It's not an easy disease to diagnose. It's just kind of by process of elimination.
Yeah.
That's the last thing.
It's not this. So yeah.
And so that diagnosis was more or less made official. I think it was late 2020. And at the time I was the team leader for Wells World Missions, their Asia mission operations. And the first thing I thought was, what does this mean for the future? How will this disease progress? Will I look like Michael J. Fox? If you seen clips of him, all over the place. Anger, uh, after coming out of China, that was just a ridiculous fiasco. Um, and my father had passed away about that time as well, and then to have this diagnosis, it wasn't like, God, what are you thinking? It was just like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Like, how dare you? Like, in right now of all times. But that first year was rough. I could see the symptoms progressing. There's like muscle stiffness, and there's a tremor, and there's like a slowness that develops if you've ever tried to like get your car keys when your hands are really cold. Kind of that sensation. Just crushing fatigue. Even some speech issues. If you've ever seen Joe Biden like not be able to finish a sentence, like something like that was happening. But the good news was, it turns out that those things are all things you can work with. And at the same time, I was starting to get more involved with Free Burma Rangers. I was joining them for their workouts, and very, very rigid, not rigid, intense workout culture that they have. You have to keep up physically to do what you do. They do this hike test. It's a 35-pound pack, a 21-kilometer course with about a mile elevation gain. You need to do that within 8 hours or less. And so they were inviting me, hey, you should join Free Burma Rangers. And I'm like, dude, I'm almost 50 years old. There's no way I'm going to pass that. And they're like, whatever, just, join the workouts and try it. And I did, and I passed it. But as I got in better shape, I could see my symptoms regressing. The one tremor I had went away. The muscle stiffness was going away. The speech thing got better. The fatigue was a thing of the past. And it got to the point where people would say, are you sure you have Parkinson's? I'm like, yeah, I still know it's there. It's like that thorn in the side. You can't deny it. But yeah, what I find interesting or humorous is that God chose a guy with Parkinson's to do what I'm doing now. And yeah, when I see him face to face, I would like to just say, hey, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
What were all the reasons? But one thing I have been able to see 3 years into it, and I feel like I still don't have that much time into this. I'm still learning what it means to be a person with Parkinson's. I meet people who have just experienced devastating things. They're in really difficult situations, or people saying, I can't do this because of this. And it's really cool to look them in the eye. They already know what I can do. They know what I've done. Most people don't know I have Parkinson's. I don't put it on Facebook. I don't wear a t-shirt. But to look at them and say, you're talking to a guy with Parkinson's. You're talking to a guy who thought 3 years ago his life was over. He'd be, I don't know, the house dad, and his, wife would be the breadwinner. Who knows what would happen? God's in control. If God wants you to go down in health, that's his will. But don't ever quit. Don't ever stop, and don't ever say, I can't because of this. In the very least, keep working. Never, never, never quit. I think that's a Winston Churchill quote.
That sounds like Winston Churchill.
I could be wrong. Yeah. I saw it on somebody's refrigerator.
You can throw anything at Winston Churchill and say he said
never,
it,
never,
and that's
quit.
completely legal. It's okay.
Yeah.
He's like the one guy you can stick any quote to.
Yeah. So
right.
I think I saw that on my aunt's refrigerator. And with Free Burma Rangers on the back of our t-shirt, the last part of the logo is never surrender. And that is just keep on going with the strength that God provides. And unless he says you're out, you're never out. So I just share that, and I hope it's an encouragement to anyone else. If they have actual Parkinson's or anything else that they're dealing with, God still loves you. He has not abandoned you.
And he'll work through that
Yes,
and use that.
he will use that, and probably in mightier ways than you could have ever imagined.
hmm
Ephesians 3:20, God is able to do immeasurably more than all that we can ask or imagine. And so easy to spiritualize that, but
hmm
it's actually true.
Well, the prayer is always for you to be more, to be more like Christ. That's the Christian prayer.
Yeah.
And it's often the case that God's going to accomplish that probably more through suffering than through giving you what you want, what you
Amen.
think you need. And he gives you a little bit of both. He's very
Yep.
gracious in that way, but his goal is to make you more like Christ. And we'll
Amen.
do that in, well, all of the above, right?
All of the above.
Hmm.
Amen.
So one question, like you could tie it into this as well, but as I was thinking, how is your like theology or your faith, I don't know if changed is the right word, but how has it been affected by all of your experiences there, right? Grew up in the US. We talked earlier, growing up, you're worried about prom, you're worried about sport, you're worried about all this kind of things that we're always thinking about here as Americans. Then you go and you experience this. How has that changed your outlook on life, your faith, your theology?
Still a Lutheran. I'll always be one. There's just something about the way Lutherans go about the Bible. You just see scripture jumping out of the pages.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to somebody else and they're like, wow, I've heard people say, you guys make it look easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we're just reading the Bible. I think the way that these past years, and this includes our time in China, time in Burma, time as somebody with Parkinson's, I think it's just made it all much more tangible, much more here and now.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a Lutheran, a lot of times things are very distant. We're saved by grace, and we think of that salvation as, someday we'll attain that, or there's a very spiritual layer to it, but we kind of stay away from the physical, the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the longer I live and the more I experience, it really is right now. And even salvation by grace through faith, I need that grace every day. I'm not only more acutely aware of the evil that's in the world, but the more I see that, I'm also more acutely aware of the evil and the sin that's in me as well.
Mm.
When you see an atrocity or hear, wow, that's how you lost your arm, it's easy to be filled with rage and hatred, and the wicked thoughts that we have. So that grace is mine today, and to cling to that with the faith that God gives us. And Martin Luther talked about, we're just the beggar with an open hand. And I think I see the things falling into my hand much clearer now, in a much more tangible way.
Yeah.
But it's still future. It's not, it's of course now and not yet.
One other question that, kind of intrigues me. So what has it been like for your kids or your wife? Right. So they're growing up in different countries, but also in kind of a very unique, they're going to have a very unique perspective on the world. So how have you seen the way that they are growing up in comparison, maybe the way that you grow up, or, I grew up, or kind of, in a typical American context?
Yeah. So my wife, Krista, great support, great missionary as well. She grew up as a Navy kid. So she moved around a lot and kind of had that in her blood. It's stressful though too. We have moved a lot. So I think there's that, for all of us, there's always that desire to, like, this is going to be the place where we just stay.
Yeah.
And fortunately we've been in Thailand now for pushing 5 years. So 6 years in Kunming, China was our previous record. So we're hoping to beat 6 years. She has been a homeschooler, has done a fabulous job of homeschooling our children. We talked a little bit at the beginning just about, the classical-ish type of homeschool and the virtues of that. And all the credit goes to her. I just helped out once in a while, or took a kid to a timeout every once in a while, but she did the work.
Teaching them Latin and
she did that. So
I do find it intriguing, Bennett. I mean, it keeps coming up in so many different places, Well, Latin and kind of the classical approach towards education. I mean, we've never talked about that, and it just kind of comes up. We were talking about languages and you learning Mandarin, and then
Yep.
oh, not Latin would be nice. You're like, yeah, my kids learned Latin, and
Yep.
it's like, wait, did you train them kind of classically? And then you're like, yeah, like, don't you? I wish I had that, don't you? And I'm like, yes, that's what.
Yeah, we totally. My wife and I have had this conversation. We're like, we're so jealous of our kids. That's the education we wish we had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's just done a wonderful job. Jack of all trades. She's had to adapt to a lot of different situations. So from Taiwan to then seminary,
Mhm.
St. Louis. So she was the one working, so I could study Greek and stuff.
Yeah.
And then mainland China. Mainland China was very mixed bag. We loved it, loved the people, but it was also a difficult place to be. And then Thailand, and that exit was just so, it was like we were getting kicked out, but we left before they could kick us out. And it was just,
Was that related to COVID?
no, that was just,
Okay, so you beat COVID
We
getting
beat-
out of China.
yeah, by like 2 days.
Oh, really?
Couldn't have planned this, but they shut our city down like less than 48 hours after we left.
Really?
But they were purging missionaries for a couple of years up until the point where we left, and we were some of the last fish in the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
So what was going on there?
this is just Xi Jinping going back to, we need to be more, get back to our communist roots. So they were purging China of missionaries. They wiped out the Koreans first, and then they kicked out the Western missionaries after that, 2018, 2019. And by the end of 2019, we were some of the last ones there.
Mm.
And our number had been up. I had been interrogated, and we had an exit ban placed on us, which meant you're kind of in holding before they interrogate you. And so we're like, yeah, I just don't want that to happen. So
What's the interrogation like?
it depends, but for other people that we knew that went through that, you're just going to get grilled, and they want all your names and contacts. They want to know if you've been doing church work. Well, who's your church? Who's the network? Who are these people connected to?
Mm-hmm.
And then once they've got that information, then they kick you out.
Mm.
So the long story short is, we left before that could happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we ended up landing in Thailand. 2 days later, we're like, oh, they closed our city down. And then we were in Thailand as COVID was then descending on that place. And we all kind of knew, like, wherever we are, we're going to probably be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, let's just stay here.
What was COVID like in Thailand?
Not bad. They handled it really well.
Yeah.
There was some lockdown stuff, but you could still get out. You could go to the grocery store. You could gather as long as it wasn't, ostentatious.
Mm-hmm.
If the neighbors complained, maybe you needed to tone it down, but a lot of common sense. And
Yeah.
we felt like it was, I don't know. I think it was the best place in the world to be
Yeah.
for COVID, all things considered.
Certainly better than where you left. Certainly
Yeah.
better than China.
I mean, they were like literally welding people into their apartments there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for our kids, their life is just, for them, that's a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
They do well with these questions now. They were always baffled on previous furloughs when they were younger. They didn't know how to answer these questions, but people would say, oh, I bet you're so glad to be home. And they're like what?
Yeah.
Because, for them, they're not home. And we did have a brief stint where we moved back to the States, 2016, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I had a church in Holland, Michigan, great church there. And we just moved in, and people were doing the meal train thing.
Yeah.
And the first meal was a casserole. Our kids had never had a casserole before. And so this thing gets plopped down on the table, and my wife, she scoops it out and then slop on the plate. And our daughter, how old was she then? Oh, I don't know. 5. And she's just looking at this pile of stuff. And she said, what is this?
Yeah.
And Krista says, it's a casserole. Kind of pokes around at it with the fork, and she says, "Why do people eat this stuff?" And Krista says, "Just eat your casserole."
Yeah.
Um, and then they were raised on spicy food,
Yeah.
Southwest China.
It's some of the best food.
Yep, good spicy food. And so about 2 weeks into it, again, it's Greta, our youngest daughter. We sit down to eat, and she just puts her head down and she's crying at the table. And I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "Nothing's spicy here. It's all bland." So I ended up going out, and I think I found a Mexican grocery store and found something close enough. And then she's like,
"Oh, well, we might have to go for lunch. There's a new Indian place here in town.
Okay.
So if you want to go there, I'll give you a couple options. But we do have and they're pretty good.
Okay.
We really fell in love with Indian food when we lived up in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
So there was I think the second biggest congregation of engineers in the country in Nashua,
Yep.
and a lot of them came from India. So there was just great Indian food, and we had a lot of Indian families in our congregation actually.
"Oh, that's great."
So we'd go over to their house, and they would kind of show us a little bit of the cooking, and then we would try it, and we would fail miserably, and then we'd try it again, and we could never master it. I don't know, just the layering of spices.
Yeah,
Just-
what you really need to master is just going to their house and eating their food.
Yeah, it was always so
that
good,
works the
yeah.
best.
And they would always. I remember the one time I went to it was like a legitimate Indian restaurant. I was pretty fresh, and I had a decent tolerance for spice. And I went with Dina Karen was the guy's name, and we go in there, and the waiter comes up, and he can speak some English, but there's still a little translation that needs to take place. And he's like hot, medium, mild. I was like, "I'll do hot." And Dina Karen, he as the guy's leaving, he grabs his arm, and he's like pointing his finger at him, and he's like, he's like, don't give him our hot.
Don't kill the guy.
Yeah, give him a white hot.
The white guy hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot too, where I'll say, "Make it hot." No, really hot.
Yeah.
Don't give me the white guy hot.
Yeah. Yeah, but some of the best food. So so for your kids, that was a tough adjustment coming back and having a casserole and
Yeah, I mean,
lasagna.
I mean, tough would be an overstatement, but for a 6-year-old, yeah, that was tough.
Yeah. So you guys were only there for 2 years, and then you felt you had to go back.
Yeah, then we went back. So in the meantime, so we actually switched from Missouri Synod to Wells during that time.
Yeah.
And we just felt like the Wells was more stable.
Mhm.
We love the Missouri Synod, wonderful churches, wonderful pastors, dear friends, lifelong colleagues. But there are those doctrinal divisions, and we found out that doctrinal division does eventually lead to discord in different areas as well.
Can you speak to that and explain? Because I think for a lot of the audience, they probably don't know. And obviously, I'm in the LCMS church. I'm not going to push back, and I just want to hear what your explanation is, and even some of the reason that you left.
Yeah, I'll try to do this as fairly and graciously as I can. These are people that I know and love. But yeah, there are different theologies, and there's some that are much more ecumenical. There's others that are much more confessional, and
so ecumenical. The goal of let's try to get along with as many people as we can, even if that means kind of
right,
acquiescing on a couple of things.
Right.
Trying to figure out where that line is, and then confessional meaning more so. We have to stay pure on if this is true, then we can't
right,
waver on that in order to appease.
Yeah. So, for example, in China, there was this question about, do we align with the state church there? The Three Self Church is what they call it. That was the legal church, but they were also towing the Communist Party line. There were things we couldn't do. I knew that our theology was getting run through a sieve. So we had translated the Small Catechism in one area. And I remember looking at it, and I think only the first 3 parts made it through, and the parts 4, 5, and 6 were gone.
It's like the sacraments were gone.
Yeah, the sacraments were gone, because they're like, well, we can use this, but we don't use that. And I just thought, well, I don't know, I guess we have to start somewhere, but this is not getting us to a confessional Lutheran church.
Yeah.
And people can beg to differ. People can believe what they want. And I'm not even arguing this one's right, that one's right. But there were differences, big differences that way. And that all comes to a head at some point. And when you're talking about mission policy and direction and where that goes, then you do have conflict and falling out between colleagues. And
Mm-hmm.
it was tumultuous. And coming back to the States too, and having a congregation there, wonderful congregation as well. But looking at, we had an issue with homosexuality, and really just kind of tackled that head on with teaching and kind of recatechizing,
Mm-hmm.
and then finding out, well, there's a church down the road that's actually okay with it and much more open, and so people could just go there. And
Mm-hmm.
and so the Wells was just a lot more stable, and it turns out that doctrinal unity does lead to less conflict in other areas as well. So
Mm-hmm.
we've been very happy there, and it's not that people in the Wells don't ever argue about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but the scale and the intensity is just not even close to what we experienced.
Yeah. So I do have a question. So, how does, and to some degree, I'm kind of naive on this. So like praying with people from other denominations,
Mhm.
right? So you kind of mentioned, you praying and asking like someone from a Buddhist faith, is it okay if I pray for you in the name of Jesus and stuff
Yep.
like that? So is that something that's okay in the Wells? 'Cause
Yeah.
to be honest, that's an area where I've heard it said that Wells are not allowed to pray with anybody else. So that's obviously not true.
Yeah, so that's kind of the caricature.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can obviously pray for people
Mhm.
In settings where it would cause confusion or give the impression that there's fellowship where there isn't.
Mm.
Then that would be a place where we would say, at least, let's hold up that yield sign first.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about our differences, and then let's decide if we proceed with praying together or not.
Okay.
So maybe the most obvious place would be like at a function,
Mhm.
altar, pulpit, or maybe even just some gathering where you've got Wells and Missouri synod together, or some other synod. And should you open the event with a prayer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Is it clear that we're in fellowship or not?
Mm-hmm.
And if there would be a question mark on there, then we would be apt to say, let's pause for now, and,
So
and not do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the question like, at Thanksgiving, does the Wells uncle pray with the Missouri Synod nephews and nieces?
Mhm.
Just say the prayer and eat.
Yeah. Okay. So that
Yeah.
that area is more okay.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. So it's more so focused on some kind of public Christian event where we're showing that we have doctrinal unity when we don't. That's the area. It's not so much you're not allowed to pray for the dying, injured Burmese soldier, and you can't pray with your uncle at Thanksgiving. Those are not the areas that's being dealt with.
Yeah, especially like when you're looking at like the dying wounded Burma soldier. That's not the time where I'm gonna say, hey, are we in fellowship?
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that guy needs Jesus,
Mhm.
and he needs prayer, and I'm going to pray for him right now.
Mhm.
But for example, there are Wells pastors who are police chaplains.
Mhm.
So they're chaplains to police departments, and they pray with guys and do the whole 9 yards. So
And that's accepted because it's part of their vocation, and it's not like that's understood going in there. Like the Wells Church understands this chaplain's going in there, and he's going to do these types of things.
yeah, right. But it's not like he's going into a Missouri Synod church and carrying out those same things in a way that where people are going to go, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that would be a good way to.
Yeah. So in
explain
some
it.
ways, and by the way, I hope anyone that's listening to this is not something I'm super well versed in. If someone, I'm not trying to like defend one side or the other. I'm really just trying to learn from this. So I hope that the listeners, if anyone's like, well, no, I read this document that said da da da, that's not the goal of this.
Great question.
Ask you
And
to-
I'll also say for anyone listening, I'm more of the field guy who runs around in the jungle.
Yes,
And I don't
exactly.
always have the perfect
Yeah.
by the book theological answer. So I hope that was the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you explain that, it seems like kind of an extension of what our communion policy is supposed to be in the LCMS. And maybe that's one of your concerns
Yes.
from someone on the Wells, which I've heard and I can give credence to be like, yeah, there's some goofy things. I mean, I was listening to an article, or I was reading an article last night, and I don't know when this was from. Last couple years, it was on Gottesdienst which is a good website. And I was filtering it. I was looking for an article for a friend who had asked some questions in the congregation, and I was going through it. I opened up this one, and it was relatively recent because it was certainly well after COVID, but it was an LCMS church. I won't say their name, but the way that the communion took place within a service which had no liturgy to it, and the pastor's wearing a baseball jersey up there. This is an LCMS service.
What?
Yeah, shame on us. But and he's up there, and for the communion, they sang as everyone they pulled out the bread and the wafer and wine from their seat, or was passed out or something like that. So everyone's got it
Like
in
a
their
little
hand.
individual thing. Okay.
And then what happens? He says, "This is going to be a holy moment. I want you to sing with me the words of institution." And so the whole congregation, led by a female vocalist, sings the words of institution.
Okay.
And there's a little YouTube clip just in case you're like, you're making this up.
With a baseball uniform.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know the church, and it's not anywhere, it's not in this area or anything like that.
Okay.
But yeah. So point being, that's atrocious. That's terrible. That's in no way in accordance with the Lutheran faith. I'm not part of the political realm, so it's not my job to deal with those kind of things, other to say on this platform, if that's something you're experiencing, get out of that church. That's not a church that either of us would endorse by any means, or probably any of the people we've had on this podcast. But anyway, with that as an aside, what we were supposed to have is some form of close communion that says, if you do not believe what we believe as the Lutheran church, for your own good, it is not good for you to come up here for communion.
Absolutely.
For one reason, because Paul says this could be done to your harm. And we take that seriously. And we do believe that if you don't understand what we're doing here, it's better for you not to come up, especially if you're going to turn around the next week and go to a Baptist altar and say, this is what I believe, and then come back to ours. So point being, it sounds like your prayer is to some degree an extension of that, to say we want to put some kind of hedge of protection around these kind of things that we do officially as a church.
Yeah, very much so. And even with prayer, when it gets exercised in a lazy way, and we do have lazy people who do it this way. And I think it's because they're afraid to explain it, or maybe they don't know how to explain it. It just comes across as, we don't pray with your kind, or we don't commune with your kind, or whatever. But I believe that in the way that you just described it with communion, even with prayer, this is a loving yield sign to say, we want to be in complete fellowship with one another. We acknowledge you as a member of the body of Christ. But there are differences. And before we start going through the motions that are indicating that we are all on the same page, let's stop and find out if we are first. And if we're not, wow, that's an opportunity to talk through that, to work through those differences, and then actually, by God's grace, come to an agreement and a fellowship. And know that as we're praying and as we're worshiping together, and even as we're at the Lord's table, that it really is a true confession of the unity that we have. But yeah, to just go through the motions, there's spiritual harm that can take place there. And if you're a pastor of God's flock, that is your responsibility. And I know sometimes people slip through, and I've been at the communion rail where all of a sudden it's like, who is this person? But you do your best, and we care for souls, and try not to do it in a sloppy or haphazard way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
And once again, as a quick clarification, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod stance is supposed to be closed communion, different closed, but that at the altar, only people who believe in the faith as expressed in our Book of Concord and the small catechism, the Lutheran faith, they are the only ones who are supposed to come up for communion. The LCMS does not draw a line when it comes to prayer to the same degree. The Wells emphasizes the prayer in kind of a similar way.
That's
right. Those are the clarifications.
Yep.
Yeah. Light us up in the comment section if you've got thoughts on that. But thanks for explaining.
Yeah, that was a great way to succinctly kind of compare the two that way.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. If you want to mention, or go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make one more plug for the organization that I'm sent through, which is called Friends Network. It's a small Wells parachurch organization. They send mostly college graduates out to different countries, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and it's friendship evangelism. So these are young men and women who go out and they build friendships. They do that through teaching English. They get jobs. Some are artists. And as they do that, they're sharing the gospel through their lives and their words. And as they do that, groups often gather around that, and these become these small worshiping groups that in some cases turn into church plants all over the world. So they're based in the Twin Cities. Their office is at St. Croix Lutheran Academy. If you're familiar with that school.
That rings a bell. Where's that at?
St. Paul, West St. Paul.
Oh, okay. That's why it's familiar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they're based out of there. And I'm also sent through them as well. And one of the hats that I wear with them is missionary coach and counselor for their missionaries that are in various countries. So I really love that organization. I love the diversion. I like what I do with FBR, but I also like to put on the old guy hat and kind of be a coach and a counselor for some of the younger missionaries, and just walk with them in life and ministry, and hopefully encourage them to keep growing in faith and bear fruit in ministry.
So if someone wanted to support you, you know, certainly prayer is a big way, but if anyone wanted to go a step further and say, you know, hey, this sounds like a mission that like our family would like to get behind or a church would like to get behind, would they go to Friends Network or would they go to Free Burma Rangers?
They would go to Friends Network.
Friends Network. Okay.
Yep. And that website is friendsnet.org.
Okay.
/Wiesenauer.
Okay. We'll put a link
in the
description.
If you can figure out how to spell our last name, good luck.
Yeah. So we'll put a link there, and then we'll have also a link to the Free Burma Rangers so that people can do more research. And if they prayerfully consider to support you, that sounds like a wonderful mission to support.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right.
Enjoyed being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Appreciate you taking the time. And let's go get some lunch.
Let's do this.
All right. God bless.